Hello, fellow Rotarians and guests. I'm Lori Alton, and I'm honored to serve as your club president for the Rotary year 2021-2022. The Rotary Club of Columbus has a storied past, beginning in 1915, when a group of civic-minded people saw the need for leaders to come together to find ways to make our community better. And now, 106 years later, we're a vibrant, strong club that continues to place service above self. Our club is diverse, with members across all sectors of business, government, military, healthcare, education, nonprofit and community service, ministry, and the arts. And we come together each week as friends with a shared purpose of learning how we can be more involved in the things that matter to all of us. We leave committed to changing our community and changing lives. As Rotarians, we are people of action, and it shows. The COVID-19 pandemic this past year has presented unique challenges to both our community and our club. However, as Rotarians and as friends, we've been steadfast in our commitment to our club, to one another, and to our fellow citizens. I've seen you reach out to others in need. You've stepped in to serve where there were gaps, and you've demonstrated love and compassion for others. But I'm not at all surprised, because that's what Rotarians do. This year, we're striving for some sense of normalcy in our lives, with our families, and in our club. We can once again gather together each week for lunch and fellowship, and I, for one, could not be more grateful. There are exciting things happening in your Rotary Club, and I'm glad you're part of it. As a service organization, the projects we're planning have a real-time impact on people's lives. So welcome back to Rotary. Thank you for being here, and thank you for making a difference in our community. Well, hello, and welcome to the September 8th meeting of the Rotary Club of Columbus. It's so wonderful to see all of you here today. And for those of you joining us online, I extend a warm welcome to you as well. Today I have some sad news. Our very own Rotarian Jamie Hempstead passed away this past Friday. And as you know, Jamie was a member of the AV team. He ran the camera each week, and a very valued member of Rotary for over 41 years. And we don't have any details on his service at this time, but we'll keep you posted. So would you please keep Jamie's friends and family in your prayers. And now would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I would like to ask Carmen Overton to please bring us today's invocation in accordance with her faith tradition.
Please join me in prayer. As we gather today, we remember those who are not gathered with us and ask a special blessing over them. For those experiencing suffering, grief, or fear, I ask that you grant comfort and peace, and may we, as Rotarians, be instruments of your comfort and peace for others. I especially think of our friends celebrating Rosh Hashanah and wish them a good new year. I ask you for physical protection as we meet today, and also that you will protect our hearts, that we may not grow weary in service above self as we unite together to create lasting change in our world, in our community, and in ourselves. Make us worthy to serve our brothers and sisters throughout the world who live and die in poverty and pain. Give them today, through our hands, their daily bread, and through our understanding, love. Give us peace and joy today. Amen. And please remember the cans.
At this time, Austin Lyle will bring us today's news.
Hello, everyone. Here is a look at your headlines. COVID continues to cause concern in schools. Children now represent 26.8% of the weekly COVID cases, according to new data released on Tuesday. Over the last 2 weeks, there was a 10% increase in the cumulated number of COVID cases in children since the beginning of the pandemic. The CDC continues to recommend masking and social distancing while in schools. There is some good news in the fight against COVID, though. There is roughly 75% of the people in the United States are vaccinated with their first dose. Operation Varsity Blues enters the courtroom. The first trial in the Operation Varsity Blues investigation begins this week with the trials against 2 former executive parents in federal court. Operation Varsity Blues was the FBI investigation into the admissions process into elite universities involving bribery, which resulted in many individuals, including actresses Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman, entering plea deals over the last 2 years. In Columbus, District Attorney Mark Jones was arrested yesterday. Jones was indicted on 9 felony charges, including violation of oath of office, bribery, and influencing witnesses on Tuesday. He turned himself in and was bonded out yesterday afternoon. No additional trial dates have been set. The Dow Jones was down 138 points at noon today. Your weather forecast was cloudy with scattered rain with a high of 84 and a low of 70. We're going to end with this local fact. Columbus is now the 2nd largest city in Georgia, with a growth of roughly 8.5% since 2010. It narrowly beat out Augusta for the coveted title. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to call on Teddy Price to introduce today's visiting Rotarians and guests.
Thank you, President Lori. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Today we have Judge Stephen Smith and Judge Art Smith as guests of Joseph Brannon. Laura Lee Bernstein, guest of Alan Harkness, and Johnny Elder, guest of Jimmy Elder. Let's give a warm welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests.
And one of our favorite traditions each week is to welcome and honor our military guest. And so at this time, I'd like to ask Pete Jones to introduce today's Colonel Ralph Jr. Soldier of the Week.
President Lori, distinguished Rotarians, standing next to me is Staff Sergeant Alix Serrano. Normally you get a bunch of infantrymen up here, but guess what? Today we have a horizontal construction engineer. Can I get a hooah? There we go. A native of Tulsa, Oklahoma, he entered the Army 21 November 2011 and went to basic and advanced individual training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where he was got the 12 November identifier as a construction engineer. He's also a heavy rated operator on numerous pieces of heavy equipment, but has served places like Fort Leonard Wood, Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, Fort Drum, New York, and is now here serving in the 1st Security Force Assistance Brigade at Fort Benning, Georgia. He served overseas both in Korea, Kuwait, and has a tour in Afghanistan where he says he got to love the infantry while he served with 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain. Numerous schools to include the Combat Advisor Training Course, Combatives 1 and 2. If you ever want to know about chemical, biological, and radiological warfare, he's got that certificate as well, along with Hazardous Material Course, Transportation, Crane Operations, and a couple of other identifiers. He already has his associate's degree from Central Texas College. He's pursuing his bachelor's degree in human resource management. As you can imagine, somebody has done multiple deployments, has numerous decorations to include the Army Commendation Medal with a C device and 4 oak leaf clusters, an Army Achievement Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, the Combat War on Terrorism Service Medal, and the coveted Air Assault Badge as well. Now I asked him what was the toughest thing he ever had to build, and it was actually a C-17 dirt landing strip. So if you haven't seen a C-17, lower version of a 737, so getting to see making something like that actually was a short takeoff and landing airfield. So he was very proud about that, but we're glad to have him here, and we hope that with your 2 kids, both Alex and Jocelyn, you enjoy one, a passport to the arts, which allows you entrance into the River Center, the National Infantry Museum, the Columbus State University, the Springer, and the Columbus Symphony Orchestra, so I'll hand that off to you. More importantly, you always get that, but probably, hopefully, what will become a cherished article on your wall or in your library is this book by Colonel Puckett, which is Words for Warriors. And this one is being given by Millen D. Faircloth in memory of his brother, Staff Sergeant Johnny W. Faircloth, who was killed in action on September 18th, 1965 in Vietnam in the Battle of An Nhang. He was posthumously awarded the Silver Star. So on behalf of our fellow Rotarians, thank you for your service. Thank you for being part of here today. And as you go back to Kelly Hill, a place that's dear to my heart, wish them all the best.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Staff Sergeant Serrano, we extend our sincerest gratitude to you and all the men and women who serve alongside you at Fort Benning. And we thank you for all you do for our country and all you do for our community. And we would love for you to join us anytime. Thank you. Now, for the next few weeks, we will be showing videos that feature one of the organizations supported by this year's Children's Fund. And so today, we're going to feature the Boys and Girls Club. Let's take a look.
Hi everyone, my name is Virginia Lawley and I'm the Vice President of Programs and Operations here at the Boys and Girls Clubs in Columbus. And I want to take time today to let you know how we will be using your grant that you gave us so generously. The grant was to support education and college and career and workforce readiness for our kids, and it will serve both to support our little kids as well as our teenagers. For our little kids, most of our focus will be to create programming activities using manipulatives and supplies that you're helping us get to help them catch up from some of the learning loss we experienced with over the summer naturally as well as during the pandemic. This includes things like reading activities, math activities, and STEAM activities. For the teens, we will be using the funds to help us with our college and career readiness. And that includes interview workshops, resume workshops, job preparedness workshops, and how to fill out applications for degrees, certifications, or institutions of higher learning. We really pride ourselves on our mission being matriculate to the next grade, and for our seniors that they graduate on time with a plan. Thank you for helping us make that happen.
Rodney, thank you and your whole team for all you do for the children in our community. You know, it's an exciting day when we can welcome a brand new Rotarian. So at this time, I'd like to ask Tom Waynick to introduce our newest Rotarian.
It's my privilege today to introduce a good friend and somebody I've known for a number of years, Anthony Randall and his wife Janine of 24 years. They have 3 children, Aria, William, and John, and they are grateful now to call Columbus home. Anthony provides executive coaching to C-suite executives, high-performance leaders, and management teams. He teaches and trains organizations through character-based moral and ethical leadership, cultural development, and how to assess, select, and retain high-character, high-talent teams. His courses are credentialed to the International Federation. Anthony has taught and trained over 12,000 professionals while serving in elite Army Special Operations units, Major League Baseball, NCAA Division National Championship teams, Fortune 100 and 500 companies, state and federal law enforcement, academia, and the local church. He's a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, an Army Ranger, Army Chaplain, ordained minister. He's a combat veteran, 7 deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Egypt. He's a published author, a 1996 United States Military Academy West Point graduate, and he's earned a master's degree in theology and ethics from Denver Seminary and a doctor of ministry and leadership from Fuller. Anthony is an assistant scoutmaster in Troop 555 here in Columbus, and he's on the board for the Northern Little League Board of Directors. His children attend St. Luke and Columbus High School, and they're members of Solid Rock Church here in Midland. Anthony's passion is to transform leaders, forge excellence in serving people and organization, and he is humbled and grateful to be accepted as a fellow Rotarian today. And so, Anthony, I welcome you to our fold here.
Anthony, welcome. We are thrilled to have you as our newest Rotarian. As you probably know, our club has a long history of service in the community. It goes back over 100 years. And in fact, our club is number 200 out of 35,000 clubs globally. And so we're happy to have you join us, and we look forward to working alongside you. So welcome. At this time, I'd like to ask Jean Kemp and or Haley Tillery to come up and, I think, talk about Rotary football. Is that correct? Did something happen last weekend? Just Jean today. Oh, okay.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if those games Saturday don't get you fired up about football, I don't know what would. Wow, what a weekend. We still have time. If you have not signed up, we've got a green sheet on the table. I think you know the rules. I won't go through the whole thing, but if you'll just fill that out, we'll take care of it. After the first week, this is the way it's standing. We've got in fourth place Army with 43 points, Alabama with 44 points, South Carolina with 46, and Auburn with 60 points. So I know they like that. As far as the national rankings right now, we've got Alabama number 1, Georgia number 2, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, and then Clemson at number 6. And sure enough, there's Auburn again at number 25. So make it a big move, this move. This might be their year. Drum roll, this might be their year. Really, we do. We've got a good crowd that's already signed up. And I need to get this to the new member back here, too. He probably hasn't got one of these yet. So, make sure you fill that out for us. So anyway, we're all set. Got a good year going. We got a big crowd that's playing Rotary football. We'll make a lot of money for the foundation. So everybody sign up and play Rotary football.
Thank you, Jean. Just a couple of announcements quickly. The deadline for the Feed the Hungry applications, that is today, and you can still get a form in the back. And do I have any runners out here? Any runners? Well, the Muskogee Rotary Club is teamed up with Mercy Med to bring us the first annual Mercy Med 5K. So the good news is it's not till February 26th. So you've got plenty of time to train and get in shape for the 5K. And so, in fact, our very own president, past President Tyler, has already signed up and said he would love to have you run with him. So applications are in the back for that. Joining me today at the head table is Carmen Overton, who brought us our invocation. And now I'm pleased to call on past President Ron Mullins to introduce today's speaker.
Before introducing our speaker, I have some additional guests. Those who know my wife, Mary, she's here with us. I married outside my league, but it's good to have you here today. I've got several colleagues from our Superior Court bench. Our Chief Judge, Gil McBride, is with us today. Judge Ben Land is with us, and Senior Judge Bryant Culpepper from Perry, Georgia. Bill Tucker, a former member, and my law clerk, Stephanie Caldwell. We're glad to have all of you here. So, what do you get when you cross a blue devil with a bulldog? An amazing story that you'll hear from our speaker today, Justice Carla McMillian. She was appointed to the Supreme Court of Georgia by Governor Brian Kemp in April of last year. She was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia, and she's the first Asian Pacific American to serve on a state's highest court in the southern United States. Before joining the Supreme Court, she served on the Georgia Court of Appeals, being appointed by Governor Nathan Deal, and she took that position in 2013. With her election the following year to that court, she became the first Asian Pacific American to be elected to a statewide office in Georgia. She's also served as state court judge for Fayette County, Georgia, a position to which she was appointed by Sonny Perdue in 2010. Before her appointment to the bench, she was a partner in the litigation group of Sutherland, Asbill, and Brennan, and she also started her legal career as a federal law clerk for the Honorable William O'Kelly, Northern District, U.S. District Court. She attended law school as a Woodruff Scholar at the University of Georgia School of Law. She also graduated with high honors from university. She's been married since 1977 to her husband Lance, who is a professor at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School. They have 2 children. They live in Fayette County. They've been longtime members of the Dogwood Church. Her story is quite remarkable, as you will soon hear. She'll take questions at the end of her talk, but she can't answer any questions about any pending legal matters. They'll have to be general questions. Please join me in welcoming her to Columbus, Georgia.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I have one correction, though. I haven't been married to my husband since 1977 because we were both children at that time. But anyway, that's okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to come to speak to you today. I'm actually a former Rotarian. I was a member of the Rotary Club of Peachtree City when I was state court judge there, but then when I went on the Court of Appeals bench, I couldn't attend the meetings. So as you know how that goes, and so I had to withdraw from that club, but it's always, that club is, and those members are always close to my heart, and in fact, I'm actually going there tomorrow to speak to them, so I will send my greetings from this club. I'm often asked why I became a judge or how I became a judge, and so I do want to talk to you a little bit about that today, and the answer is complicated, so I want to tell you in the form of a story about me and my family. I was born and raised in Augusta, and my father was also born and raised in Augusta. Many of you may not know, but there's a long history of Chinese in Augusta. It has one of the oldest Chinese communities in the southeast. The Chinese first came to the Augusta in the 1870s to help build an extension of the Augusta Canal, and my understanding is that some of those workers stayed on, told their families in China about living in Augusta, and that's how my family came to Augusta. My grandfather was the first in my family to come, and I'm not sure exactly what year he came, but I do know that there was a Wong cousin in 1900 who operated a grocery store there, and I have to think that that cousin helped to bring my grandfather over. So I brought a few slides with me to tell my story, and here's a map of China, and you'll see the pinpoint there, and that's where the Wong family originated from. It was the Yuten village in the Xinjiang district in southern China, which is fairly close to Hong Kong. And here's let's see if I can get another. Oh, here's another map of it. It's a little bit closer, and you can see it's fairly close to Macau and Hong Kong. And in fact, in 2017, my husband and I had the opportunity to go back to visit Hong Kong, where my mother is actually from, and we took a train trip into to that province and did not go to the home village, but got close. So, but a lot of the Chinese from Augusta originated in that southern China area. Now, again, I don't know when my grandfather first came to the United States, but I have heard from my father that he was here during the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, but I do know that he was in Augusta by 1914 because the records show that in the next year, he went back to China and married my grandmother, who was from a neighboring village. Now, this was during the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was a federal law barring Chinese from immigrating to the United States because there was a fear that the Chinese would bring diseases, would depress wages, and take jobs. And so most Chinese were not allowed to immigrate to the United States. There were a few exceptions, and one of those was for merchants. And you recall that my Wong cousin operated a grocery store, and so did my grandfather. He was a merchant, so he fell under one of the exceptions under the Chinese Exclusion Act and was allowed into the country. So back to the Wong family history. Upon returning to the United States in 1915, and this was December of 1915, my grandmother and grandfather came back on a ship called the USS Christmas, which was appropriate for the time, and records from Angel Island Immigration Center show that my grandfather was detained there for 3 days and my grandmother for 12 days. Now, the Angel Island Immigration Center is similar on the West Coast as Ellis Island in New York, which many of you probably are familiar with. And during that time, because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, it was very common for the Chinese to be detained upon entering the United States because the immigration officials would interview them to make sure that they did in fact fall under one of the exceptions under the act. So my grandparents were interviewed. They were released from the immigration center, and they stayed in San Francisco for a few months and then went on to Augusta in 1916 to start their family. And so here's a picture of the Wongs from 1928. This is really the only picture I have of my father's family during this time period. My father was the youngest of 6 children. He's actually the baby sitting in my grandfather's lap there. And my grandparents operated a grocery store, as did many of the other Chinese in Augusta during that time. The first Chinese operated grocery store started in Augusta in 1876, right around the time I think when the Chinese first came to build the Augusta Canal. And by 1915, there were 30 Chinese operated grocery stores, and according to the 1940 census, there were 63. Now you might ask, why on earth were there so many Chinese grocery stores in Augusta? Well, they didn't sell Chinese food. These were just mom and pop grocery stores, and they were mainly located in the African American community because during that time period, white grocers were pressured not to serve black customers. So the Chinese filled that void and operated the grocery stores during that time. And most of those Chinese families would operate the store in the front, and they would live in the rooms in the back. And that's what my family did. And my father was actually born in the back room of his family's grocery store. My father was born in 1927, so that's how I date this picture, because he looks to be about 6 months old. He was born in September of 27, so this looks about, maybe he's about 6 months old. It's spring, they're wearing shorts, and I think this picture was taken outside near the old Medical College of Georgia building, and so that's why I think it's the spring of 1928. And again, my father's the baby, but I especially want to point out to you the second youngest son, Robert, who's a toddler in this picture. He's standing to the left of my grandmother in this picture, and Robert will figure more in this story later. Now, I truly believe that I wouldn't be in this position that I'm in today except for a few key people who helped my family and me along the way. The first group of people that I really credit for helping my family is the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association of Augusta. And in the Chinese, we call it the Zhonghua. And so here's a picture of the building, which is still located in downtown Augusta. The CCBA was formed in 1927 by the Chinese community, and it served to welcome the new immigrants and provided a place to celebrate Chinese holidays and culture and offer Chinese language schools for the children. It was central to the Chinese community in Augusta. In fact, I was there in the past few years celebrating Chinese New Year with them. The CCBA continues to flourish to this day, and as a child, I took Chinese language classes there, though they didn't take, to my mother's chagrin, but I did take classes there, and they still meet there on a regular basis in the CCBA hall. I've also brought with you some other pictures that you will see are marked courtesy of the Georgia Archives, and that's because when I was doing the research for this project, I'm a historian at heart, even though I'm in the law. I really love history. So I was doing some research about my family background, and I went to the Georgia Archives site, the Vanishing Georgia collection online, and just typed in Augusta Chinese, and all these pictures came up. And so I pulled them off of that, and you'll see that I've marked them here. And so this is a picture of the very first Chinese school in Augusta, which I believe was in a storefront in downtown Augusta. And here's the first Chinese language teacher pictured here. And then here's another picture of the Chinese students, and this was, again, courtesy of the Georgia Archives from 1933 to 1934. And my Uncle Thomas, who is actually the oldest brother in my father's family, he's standing right in the middle in that picture with the black belt on. You'll see him. He's right in the back row with the black belt. And I think he's about 14 or 15 at the time. And here's another picture, and this is actually from my family's photo album, and he looks like he's wearing the same outfit. So here he is again with the Chinese students, and you'll see that I think that's the teacher there that we saw in the first photo. So you can see the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association and the Chinese school really played a large part in my family's history. But another entity that really helped my family along the way is the First Baptist Church of Augusta. As you may be aware, the First Baptist Church is a historic church because, and when I was growing up, they were always talking about the First Baptist Church is the home of the Southern Baptist Convention. And that's because the Southern Baptist Convention met there for the very first time in 1845. But the church was actually historic to my family in a different sense because it reached out to the Chinese community early on and formed a Chinese Sunday school in 1885, which I've been told is one of the oldest Chinese Sunday schools in the country. And so I brought some photos of the Chinese Sunday school, which continued to meet throughout my childhood and until recent years. And what they would do is the church would have Sunday school in the morning, regular Sunday school in the morning, and church services, and the Chinese Sunday school would meet at 2 o'clock. So you could attend both services. So here's the Chinese Sunday school from 1923, and you can see it's quite a large group of people. And here's another group from 1926. And then here's another group from 1950. But in addition to forming the Chinese Sunday School, the First Baptist Church was personally important to my family because one of the pastors took a special interest in my family, and in particular, my Aunt Margaret, my father's second sister. And that pastor recognized that she had some special talents. As you can imagine, my grandparents, who were not from this country, didn't know the language, also didn't know much about the university system. So this pastor helped my Aunt Margaret navigate the university system, helped her get a scholarship to Mercer University, and then helped her get a scholarship to the Medical College of Georgia to get her medical degree. And because this was during World War II, she went through an accelerated program for both undergraduate and medical school, and she ended up getting her MD at the age of 22. And here's a picture of her graduating class from the Medical College of Georgia. At that point, I think it was called University of Georgia School of Medicine, and I'll pop her picture out. And so you can see, I'm really proud of my Aunt Margaret. For one thing, there's only 2 women in the whole class, so she's one of the 2 women. And of course, the only Chinese woman in the class. And I'm proud to say that she was the first Chinese American woman to graduate with a medical degree in the Southeast. So she was a big influence on me growing up. And I don't think she would have gotten there except for that pastor in the church who helped her along. In addition to the Baptist Church and the CCBA, another, I guess it's just a circumstance I think that really helped my family along was that they had the benefit of the public school system in Augusta. And you may think that's a strange thing to say, but as you can imagine, during this period of segregated schools, it wasn't really clear whether the Chinese fit into the white schools or the African American schools. In Savannah, the Chinese went to the African American schools until the 1920s. In Mississippi, there's actually a famous case where the Chinese were barred from the white public schools, and that law was challenged, and the case went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court called Gong Lum versus Rice, and it's a 1927 case, and the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the law barring Chinese children from the white public schools, citing Plessy versus Ferguson. But in Augusta, the Chinese children were generally permitted to attend what were the better public schools. And so here's a picture from the Georgia Archives with the Joe brothers, and they still have family members in Augusta, but the caption in this picture that I found claimed that they were the very first Chinese children to attend public schools in Augusta. And now at this point in time, my Aunt Ruby, who was the oldest in father's family, would have been about 3 years old at the time. So she was right behind them in attending the schools. And the Chinese apparently were able to attend the schools without much controversy until 1931, when apparently there was a bill introduced in the legislature, the Georgia legislature, to withdraw funding for any public school that admitted Asian children. Fortunately, some Chinese families and some legislators from Augusta lobbied against that bill, and it was abandoned and never passed. So my father and his brothers and sisters were able to go to the better public schools due to the courage of these Chinese families and these legislators in the community in Augusta. And so my father graduated from the local high school there, Richmond Academy, if you know Augusta. And my aunts went to there was a separate high school for girls at that time, Tubman High School. So I brought a picture. Here's my father. After graduating from high school, he went on to the Citadel, where he graduated in 1950. And I started thinking, oh, surely, 1950, that's pretty early for a Chinese person, I would think, to graduate from the Citadel, because when I was in college, that's when they were, Citadel was having all of those issues admitting women and all that, and so you get the sense that the Citadel is not a very open place. But that turned out not to be true at all. There was actually another Chinese man from Augusta who graduated there in the 1930s, so very early on. And I have to think that man really encouraged my father to go on Citadel as well. So Dad went on to serve in the Army, where he achieved the rank of first lieutenant before he was honorably discharged. So I brought a picture of the Citadel, and then here's a picture of my Uncle Thomas. This is the one where he was in the white outfit and the belt in the Chinese school. Well, my Uncle Thomas also served in the Army during World War II, and here's a picture from my family's photo album in his Army uniform with his buddies. I'm sure my grandparents never imagined that they would have a granddaughter who would be a lawyer, much less a judge. When I was growing up, I didn't know many lawyers at all, except for the fathers of some of my friends. We never went to court or had any contact with the justice system, except on the day that my mother was naturalized as an American citizen. That was a very proud day, and I can remember going to federal court, and it may have been Judge Dudley Bowen. I'm not sure, but it may have been Judge Bowen. We've talked about that before, who swore her in. But my parents, like many of the other Chinese parents at the time, wanted me to follow in my aunt's footsteps and become a doctor, but that's not where my passion or my talents were. And with a degree in history and economics, I decided I was either going to graduate school or law school, and I chose law school and have never looked back. If you'd asked me 12 years ago where I would be the rest of my career, I would have told you Sutherland. I was very happy in my private practice, greatly enjoyed my clients and my law partners, but what happens, I live in Fayette County now, and about 10, 11 years ago, we had a couple of Superior Court judges resign due to lapses in their judgment, and I started getting worried about my judiciary and about my community. I started thinking about, that was the first time I started thinking about applying for a judgeship, but I have to admit to you that after about a week of soul searching, I'd pretty much decided not to apply because I was happy with my law practice, and I also knew that if I got the position, I would have to run for election, and that was something that I never really wanted to do. So I told my husband Lance that I wasn't going to apply for it. But what changed my mind was taking a look at my two children. They're, 17 and 13 now, but at the time they were little. And I started thinking about what I would tell them about serving the community. And especially for my daughter, I wanted to be able to tell her about taking a risk and not staying safe and in a comfortable position. So with my husband's blessing, I applied, and I was honored when Governor Sonny Perdue appointed me to the State Court of Fayette County. So I brought a couple of pictures, and I like to show them off because James is now, and he's a senior in high school now, and he's probably embarrassed that I go around the state showing this picture of him being picked up by Governor Perdue. But I love this picture, and just a quick story. When you get sworn in, those of you who've gotten sworn in, they tell you, okay, it's very choreographed. You can only take a certain number of pictures, and so we get in there after the ceremony, and the first thing Governor Perdue does is say, "I want a picture with your kids." So he messed up the whole schedule because he just loves children, and so that's the point of my story, is that Governor Perdue loves children, so he just immediately picked them up and had pictures made with them. And here's a picture of my daughter too, and so she's 13, she'll be 14 tomorrow, so she's probably also embarrassed that I show off her cute baby pictures all over the state. So, well, here's a picture of the investiture with Governor Perdue, and I wanted to bring this picture because this is the whole Wong family with the governor, and you'll notice the elderly man at the bottom of the picture in the plaid shirt. That's actually my Uncle Robert, who I pointed out in the very first picture as a toddler boy. Now, this was just a few months before he passed on, but who would have thought that that little boy from that immigrant family who was fairly new to the United States would someday be standing in the House chamber with the governor of the state of Georgia getting his picture made. So after the appointment to state court, my expectations were soon fulfilled in that I did get a challenger. This was 2012, and I campaigned for about a year, and after some hard work, I won that election, and looking back, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world, because campaigning gives you great fortitude, and it forces you to take stock in yourself and what you believe in, and it also makes you be able to express that in 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever they give you in these meetings to talk about yourself. So after winning the election in July of 2012, I had no other thought other than what I would do for the next 4 years as state court judge. But this time, what happened was there was an opening in the Court of Appeals due to the retirement of Judge Harris Adams, and several acquaintances asked me if I would consider applying for that position, and I said, absolutely not, because I just won my election. I had campaigned really hard for it, and it was a very hard-fought election. But this time, someone who I really trusted, who was, I would consider a mentor and someone I respected, took the time to reach out to me and said, hey, you really need to take a look at this Court of Appeals position. So I applied, and I was honored when Governor Deal appointed me to the Court of Appeals in January of 2013. So I served on the Court of Appeals for 7 years, had a statewide election in 2014 with no opposition, which, by the way, is the best way to run. If you can possibly get it done that way, I highly recommend it. In 2019, Justice Robert Benham on the Georgia Supreme Court announced that he wasn't going to run for election, and then he announced that he was going to step down, allowing an appointment. And so I went through the process again and applied with Governor Kemp and made the short list, and I ended up interviewing with Governor Kemp in his office on the Tuesday. This was March of 2020. This was the Tuesday before the state shut down on the Friday. And so I pretty much didn't think I would hear anything for a while, given that I'm like everyone else. I'm watching the governor giving press conferences every day, trying to figure out what's going to happen with the pandemic. But lo and behold, a few weeks later, I actually get a text one morning, and it says, "Hi, Judge, this is Brian Kemp. Give me a call." And I thought, okay, I hope this is for real. So I did give him a call, and indeed it was Governor Kemp, and he offered me the position. And I was sworn in to the Supreme Court of Georgia in April of 2020. You notice this investiture is very different from the other ones. It's outside in Liberty Plaza, which is right behind the Capitol, and we're standing, a good 6, 8, 10 feet apart. We're like being super careful to make sure that we don't spread COVID at that time. And it was a bittersweet day for me. Obviously, it was an exciting day that I got on the Supreme Court, but it was also bittersweet because my father actually had passed away when I was 16 years old, and that was 30 years to the day that he had passed away. And so, I was remembering my dad, but very happy for this opportunity. So this brings my story to the present day, from China to Augusta to the Supreme Court. And if you take anything away from my family story, I hope it's the importance of reaching out to people who may look different from you, who may speak a different language, or eat different kinds of food. The help that my family and I got along the way, directly and indirectly, has opened up so many opportunities for me and has brought me to the place where I am today. I'm extremely grateful to all of the help that I was given and hope in turn to pass that on. And I encourage you to do the same. So thank you again for allowing me to tell my story. And if there's time, I'm happy to take a few questions.
Does anyone have a quick question? We have microphones if you do. Thank you, Reggie. Oh, wait. This is our,
Yes?
Keisha?
Oh, they're holding the mics. No questions. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, no more questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Justice McMillian, we appreciate so much you being here. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing your story, and it's very inspirational. And so to show our appreciation, we'll be placing a children's book inscribed with your name in our local public library. So thank you. Now I would like to point out or pick on Haysha real quickly. Haysha, stand back up. Haysha Haddad, our GRSP student. I just want to welcome you. I've already spoken with you, said you're having a good week and you enjoyed your weekend. Great, thank you. And so remember, there'll be a replay of today's program on Facebook and on YouTube. And if you're watching online and would like to attend in person, please RSVP and let us know. Just re-welcome all of our visitors. Thank you all for being here. A special welcome to Staff Sergeant Serrano. You honor us with your presence. And I hope you'll be here next week when we'll have Mary Sherman with the Georgia Sports Council. So until we meet next week, let's continue to make a difference.